Hi all. In this video, I want to show off two new features that I'm introducing to Terra, which is an asset on the Unity Asset Store. If you don't already know, Terra is a procedural terrain generator that allows you to create a node graph and apply some material settings, and then you have terrain that generates infinitely in all directions surrounding whatever game object you're tracking. You can check out Terra. There's a link for it in the description below. Anyways, so what I'm going to show first is you can now preview your terrain before running your scene. And the way you do that is there's actually a new toggle um, in the Terra settings inspector. And you can see that the inspector has actually changed quite a bit. Instead of having this text that was here originally, I've replaced it with icons, and that's because I'm planning on adding a procedural object placer in the near future. And this basically just clears up a little space up top. You can also see that some of this text has been moved around. I think it allows you to find what you're looking for quickly. So if we go ahead and just toggle on this display preview, you'll see that a tile loads and it can be seen in the editor. Um, this is something I've set up already. I've made the node graph and I've set up some materials. There's actually also an angle placement type, which has been released in Terra, but this is the first time I'm showing it live in video. Um, and you can see that, if I go ahead and change the angle placement minimum to down here or something, and I scroll down and press update preview, the angle minimum required angle threshold lowers, so this texture also lowers, but I'm going to bring that back up to around 37 where it was before and update the preview again. Okay. And you can see here that this elevation material, all I've applied is one that has a max height of 400, which cuts off around here. And then I have this nice angle that blends in between this higher rock texture. And then that higher rock texture has a minimum height of 400 and a maximum height of 1000. So this is what we get right here. And if we go ahead and run this, and I don't have a camera set up, but you'll see that it starts generating. And it's the exact same thing that we saw in the preview. So it's basically a nice, what you see is what you get editor. And I think this terrain actually looks really cool. If I go ahead and look at what I have set up for the node graph, it's what I had visible in, I think it's actually one of the promo shots for Terra, or screenshots on the Unity Asset Store. But it's quite simple. It's just a mask between a ridge and a pink node, um, and that's what you get. And I described earlier that Terra is now multi-threaded, which basically means that chunk generation here happens off of the CPU. So if I go ahead and toggle this multi-threaded to off, I'm going to stop and return to the editor first. If I go ahead and turn off the multi-threaded editor, and I go back here, you can see that it's taking a much longer time to generate these tiles, which is what Terra has been. So it's really nice that we get this multi-threading capability. And basically what it does is it starts with all of these different tiles. Right now we have 9 set up, and it offloads all of the height polling and all that generation stuff to a different thread on the CPU, so your player can still walk around and stuff. The only time where you'll get a little spike is when the chunk is being rendered for the first time. So if we run this again and we look at the scene, you can see how fast it's going. But if we also look at the profiler, which I haven't been recording, so let's try that again. Here we go. If we look at the profiler, and after it's done generating, I'll pause the scene. The only jumps you see are these kind of blue spikes every once in a while. And if we go and dissect this a little bit, we can see that there's something called MT dispatch, which stands for main thread dispatch. And what that does is it takes whatever computation that was happening or any results that were on the other background thread and moves them to the Unity main thread. So you can see that there's a quick jump in the amount of milliseconds that it takes to send this to the screen, but it's really quite short because it only takes 1 or 2 frames to actually do that. So you won't even really see any interrupts. And you can prove that by going to the stats view in the game view. And if we take a look here, while this entire thing is generating and now it's done, our frames per second doesn't drop below 40. We may have skipped a frame or two, but that's really not a big deal because your player will still be able to walk around it as if nothing is happening. You can also see that there's a pretty visible gap between these, and there's a half a second delay between actually placing the tiles where they should be, and that's because of multi-threaded access to the generator can get a little iffy. So inserting that gap between generation ensures that your generator doesn't get screwed up during the generation process. And that's about it. I can't really think of anything else that I want to show right now. One thing to keep in mind is that I will be, my next project for Terra is to add procedural object placement with an object pool. And if you don't know what that is, that basically means that you can say place trees around the player. So let's say the player is standing right here in this tile. You could go ahead and you could place trees in a certain radius around the player, or you could place rocks depending on the angle of the slope. So let's say you wanted to place rocks at a 45-degree angle, and this matches up with 45 degrees. You could place rocks only here, or you could place grass. So the object placer is what's coming up, but as of now, that's all I have for updates for Terra. Thank you.